right, welcome back to another episode of the Psychopedia podcast. I'm your co-host, Hank Sinatra, here with my slouchy co-host.
Investigators later, this is not slouchy, this is laid back cool.
Oh, okay.
It's not, slouching would be this.
I'm laid back. You said, you go, I'm sitting like this, I don't care. So I just thought it was funny, and maybe...
Apparently I do care.
Maybe it's not. By the way, you just heard me on the phone, okay?
Yes, that's why I'm exhausted right now. That was an exhausting conversation to listen to.
Yeah, we'll see how I feel after this episode.
You had to order... Shut up. You had to order and then reorder, and then you went through your order again. It was a lot.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, the phone call was 7 minutes, so I can understand why that would just absolutely throw you for a loop.
Minutes of hell.
Wow. So listen to me. On the phone, how much... I take way too much pride in this. How much am I a gentleman? How much of a gentleman am I?
You are a gentleman and a scholar.
Thank you. Well, how much of a gentleman and a scholar am I that I say 0 instead of O when it comes to numbers?
I do the same thing. Is that like a stand-up quality that we have?
No, it's not. It's just something that I make a point of doing because I feel like saying O is like, that's a letter, bro. Why are you throwing a letter into a number?
Yeah. I mean, technically it is a letter, but it is...
It's a letter.
It's sufficient, though.
It is, but it's Bush League.
Okay.
It's low IQ, and I'm very debonair.
I said a gentleman and a scholar, did I not?
I am so sophisticated.
Yeah. Well.
S0PHI.
No, seriously.
Well, here's what we're doing right now. We're getting into a part 2 of a fucking doozy of a case. We laid the foundation in the last episode. Today we're going to bring it home. We're going to get the details.
And it's really devastating. It really, really is.
Then I'm very glad I didn't say we're going to have some fun.
No.
That's almost what I said.
No, it's okay. Listen, there's fun to be had when you're trying to squeeze, some levity into a very dark situation, right? You always find comfort in comedy. That's what you do when you're anxious. So I think we all get that about you. So yeah, if you want to punctuate this horrific case with some comedy, by all means.
I would love to. I don't know how I do it.
I don't know, but you do it respectfully, and that is the art.
Yeah. Very funny moment in part 1.
Which one? There were a lot.
AKA Bob.
Oh, no. I didn't come back from that. Like, there was a chance we were going to have to not record.
Yeah, I know. That was, that was like a full circle moment for me.
Yeah.
Really was.
It was a good one.
So being that this is a part 2, I'm not going to do too much ado.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
I do want to say, if you're here for the first time, welcome. If you're here for the 100th time, welcome home.
Freak.
And you're probably not here for the first time because this is a part 2. But if you are here for the first time, go back to part 1 and listen.
Yes. No, I'm so glad you said that because I'm going to give a little bit of a summary, but it is in no way a replacement for listening to a full episode.
No way.
On what brought us to this point that we're about to begin at.
Yeah. And if you're just about at the end of your run, you've binged all the episodes, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. We hear that from people. I want more episodes. Go on over to patreon.com/psychopediapod for, so many episodes. There's got to be another 100 or so episodes over there at this point.
Yeah, and there's also ad-free episodes, which we never actually discuss, and we probably should, because that would bring me over to Patreon.
But patreon.com/psychopediapod, 5 bonus episodes a month for the Semen Demon level, 2 bonus episodes a month for the Little Freaks level, and just other stuff, group chat. Every 500 Patreon supporters we get, we have somebody come sit in on a live recording with us, and we're about to choose somebody else, so that's going to be fun. But whether you signed up a year and a half ago or you sign up today, everyone's in the same mix, okay? So with that said, also Apple, Spotify, YouTube, review, rate, subscribe. It helps us a lot.
And to add to that, because I know you're like, you have that built into your like muscle memory to say it like that.
Yeah. Please
add to that we have an Instagram page, a TikTok, and all that, because we're trying to build up our socials.
Yeah, we want to just be in constant contact with you guys, and there's only one way to do it.
Well, we love connecting with you, and that's the reality of it. So the more places we have that capability, the better.
Exactly. So I'm just going to read off some Patreon names before we get into it. Every time I go through them, I'm like, this is the top of class here. Surely they can't get better. And then they get better.
Yeah.
So peekaboo, but it's spelled Pique.
Oh my God.
That piqued my fucking interest.
Wow, that's excellent.
The fact that they heard me say that peak is one of my favorite words.
Yep. And
some episode.
And it's a play on peakerism, which has come up multiple times in our cases.
Patricia Castiglione.
Hey, Pat.
Hello, over there in Ireland. Morgan Storch.
Hey, Morgan.
Hey, Morgan.
Morgan's actually one of my favorite names.
It's a great name.
And I considered it when naming my children. It
is a great name. Succulent Chinese meal. So we have an additional one in addition to my sister, who is Succulent Chinese meal on Patreon. Her real name's Mandy, but on there you can refer to her as a Succulent Chinese meal.
What's up?
Degraded cunt house. Send us a message, please. Let us know what that means.
It's going to come to me, and then I'm going to be pissed that I didn't remember it in this moment.
We'll say it later if it comes to you.
Okay.
Jillian Deegan, just a strong fucking name all around. Jillian. And then your quasi-heroic semi-savior.
High five all around. That was excellent.
High one.
That was excellent.
Your quasi-heroic semi-savior? I mean, bro.
Listen, it hurts. The truth hurts. And it hurts when it's said in your face many times over in one name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, so you understand that I have feelings.
I just like to fuck with them a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, good. I'm sure you're having fun. I'm sure I'll be covering you on an episode of Psychopedia over on Patreon.
Rude. Scary.
Yeah, scary. That's how I feel. Scared right now.
Because you've never made a short joke about me, ever. So I have no idea what it's like to be, like, poked at. I have no idea. You're such a gentleman and a scholar 24/7.
I say zeros and numbers. I don't know what else I could do to prove my gentlemanliness and scholar.
Nothing. The way you treat others does not play into that.
I'm good to everybody.
I know you are.
So without any further ado.
And insulting.
Without any further insulting, I would really like to hear about part 2 of this case.
Great. In part 1, again, this is a summary, but it's not going to give you enough to go off of, so please go back and listen to part 1. But for those who already have, in part 1, we introduced Robert Hansen and delved deep into his upbringing with a domineering father who seemed to make it his life's mission to make Robert feel unworthy and small, while at the same time making it his mission to, quote unquote, make a man out of him. In childhood, Robert developed a prominent stutter as well as explosive acne, which added to his feelings of low self-esteem and inadequacy. During young adulthood, Robert began committing acts of petty larceny, which we're going to discuss in more depth today, as well as an appetite for stalking, raping, and murdering sex workers in Anchorage, Alaska, where he lived and operated a local bakery.
Yeah.
He was also married with 2 children. So I know that I'm mentioning that he targeted sex workers, and as you brought up in part 1, which was very astute, the victims that we covered in part 1, there were 2. One was an attempted kidnapping and assault. One was a murder, and one was an actual rape and assault.
Yeah.
2 of those women were sex workers. One was not. But we're going to see very soon how he went to narrow in on sex workers exclusively.
Wait, what did I say that was astute?
You said in part 1, when I was mentioning like throughout part 1 that he went on to like prey upon sex workers, but the first victim that I talked about was not a sex worker.
Customer.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you brought that to my attention, and I thought that was very astute and accurate.
Astute.
And that's something that he develops into, and we're going to learn why.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so everything that we're going to talk about from this point forward constitutes part 2.
Okay.
The summer after the discovery of Robert's first victim, the beautiful young woman Celia Beth Van Zanten in 1972.
That was the one that froze to death, right?
Yes, okay. Unfortunately it was. So he slashed at her chest and he wounded her. Exactly, and he sexually assaulted her, but he left her alive. But she wound up freezing to death. So after that very, very tragic death, Robert entered that classic serial killer cool-down period that we see in these types of cases.
Oh, yeah.
During that time, he attended church regularly with his wife, Darla, and projected the pristine image of a devoted husband and father. But by the time the following summer rolled around and Darla left with the kids to spend a chunk of time in Arkansas with her family, another teenage girl would tragically fall victim to Robert's ruthless barbarity. Megan Siobhan Emmerich was just 17 years old when she vanished from Seward, Alaska on July 7th, 1973. She was last seen leaving the laundry room in the dormitory of her boarding school, the Seward Skill Center. And while neither Megan's body nor any trace evidence has ever been discovered, her disappearance / believed to be death was eventually linked to Robert Hansen.
And you would think, you'd think he'd be doing these killings in the winter when there's 6 hours of sunlight.
Yes, but
the sun is out to 10, 11 p.m. over there.
Yes, but remember, he's bringing them out into very secluded areas.
Yeah, but still, killing, I feel like, is a nighttime thing.
It may have been nighttime.
Unless you're an absolute psychopath.
Like Robert Hansen?
Like Robert Hansen, yeah.
After Megan's disappearance, Robert made a calculated shift in his approach, and this is what I just alluded to. He decided to target sex workers exclusively, having learned from his prior arrest for attacking Robin Patterson, who was a sex worker, that the police tended to marginalize sex workers and show less urgency in investigating their cases. Remember, the woman that he tried to attack and kidnap, Susan, was not a sex worker, and that's what he wound up being put away for.
Yeah.
Additionally, they were much easier to lure into his Subaru, which made them even more vulnerable to his predatory tactics. At this stage in Robert's criminal career, symptoms of his previously diagnosed manic depression and schizophrenia seemed to begin to emerge more frequently. He oscillated between extreme highs and experiencing everything with vivid intensity, and then devastating lows that plunged him into despair. His detachment from reality became so profound that he allegedly struggled to discern right from wrong. And I say allegedly because that's at least what his defense attorney argued to the Supreme Court of Alaska after he was arrested for shoplifting a chainsaw from a Fred Meyer supermarket. But it's important to note that it was later determined, and this is really interesting, that Robert Hansen tricked the diagnosing prison psychiatrist into believing that he struggled with manic depression or bipolar, when really he was just becoming increasingly narcissistic, antisocial, and just plain disturbed. Yeah. So it later came out that these psychological conditions that he was diagnosed with didn't exist.
Really?
It's like that mad versus bad kind of debate, and it was later determined that he was just bad.
Makes sense why he didn't take the medicine.
Yeah, it does. By this point, Robert had become a full-blown kleptomaniac, a condition often seen in budding serial killers who believe that they're above societal rules and can get away with anything.
Really?
That's not to suggest that all people who struggle with kleptomania go on to become serial killers, but we have seen it before. It's also like thumbing their nose at society, shoplifting.
It's also a sense of entitlement and self-centeredness.
Exactly.
I deserve what I want for nothing.
Yeah.
Well, when I want it.
Right. This compulsive behavior fed into Robert's growing sense of entitlement and fueled his escalating disregard for authority. With Robert, he felt a voracious need to steal and to experience that surge of what he described as sexual arousal that came with walking into a store and taking any item he wanted without having to pay for it. After the chainsaw arrest, Robert said, quote, "I have a thing about taking things. I just love to see if I can get by with it. My gosh, I damn near ejaculate my pants if I can walk into a store, take something, and get out the door without having to pay for it."
And then he starts taking lives, which is the ultimate theft.
Yep.
I guess.
It's an escalation.
Yeah. And the whole sexual arousal thing, it makes me feel a little... not bad for him, but the fact that, the adrenaline rush you get from stealing something, that's not typically what people feel when they feel sexual arousal, adrenaline and dry mouth and just
fear.
Fear.
A little bit,
yes,
right?
Exactly. That's a little bit of a sad association.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I feel like emotionally speaking, and might seem like a really obvious statement, but he's not well.
No.
I know that we're saying that he faked his mental health struggles, but I do think that his the emotionality component, what?
He's got something.
Right, and I think that the emotionality component is completely skewed with him.
Like gamblers who are addicted, I just learned this a couple of years ago, they're addicted to the feeling of losing.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Why? Because they think they deserve it?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that is so sad.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's so much more intense than winning. And additionally, it's so much more predictable than winning.
Losing, right. That happens way more often.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Robert was sentenced, this is nuts, to 5 years behind bars for stealing the chainsaw.
Wow.
More time than when he abducted, raped, and assaulted a woman with a deadly weapon who happened to be a sex worker.
Yeah.
It just shows you like the priorities of the legal system in that area in that time.
Yeah.
When he was released just 16 months later, again, hardly a slap on the wrist considering his sentence was 5 years,
Yep.
Robert's mental state, whatever it was in terms of the diagnosability of it or not, it did begin to somewhat stabilize, or I'll say this, his behavior stabilized.
Okay.
Can't speak to his I'm not a mental health professional, but his behavior stabilized. He was regularly receiving treatment for about a year, like speaking to a therapist.
Okay.
However, he soon realized that he disliked the confines of the safe, stable, gray area that he coasted along, and he craved the highs and the lows that he experienced when he wasn't treating and when he was assaulting women.
Oh.
So he made the decision to discontinue treatment.
I was gonna say I relate to that until you talked about assaulting women.
Well, what part do you relate to?
Being like addicted to the chaos of a life unmanaged.
There are aspects that are relatable.
Yeah.
In almost every case.
Yeah.
It's when these like, I don't want to say typical human emotions, but like human emotions that many of us grapple with turn into other or combine with the predatory nature that pre-exists that we, thank God, don't have.
Yeah. Yeah. My therapist said to me, as I was describing to him my perfect life, which I thought I wanted. I really, at that time, thought I wanted. I was living nothing even close to it. My life didn't resemble what I said I wanted at all. Neither did my actions. But he goes, this life that you say you want, he goes, I have to tell you, first of all, it still feels unmanageable. Even just because it's all good doesn't mean that it's easy to manage. Like you're talking about a lot of good stuff, kids, house, work, whatever. And then he goes, it's also very boring. And I actually had to sit there and think about whether or not I wanted what I said I wanted, because he illustrated the fact that it's going to be, for the most part, boring.
And hitherto, were you not living what he would consider a boring life?
No, because I was causing chaos in my life.
Right. But wasn't it not wrong for you to strive for something different?
No, he didn't say I shouldn't strive for it. He goes, I just want to give you like a heads up.
Okay. Like set the expectation that it doesn't mean perfect. What you're describing does not mean perfect. There is no perfect.
And typically a drama-free life can feel boring at times, until I realized recently that I was mistaking my boredom for peace. And I was like, oh my God, I'm at peace right now. Oh my God.
Dave sometimes does things that's so funny. Like he'll like kind of like tease or whatever, or he'll get like the kids riled up or the dog. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm manufacturing drama. And I like really get that. So at this point in the case, it's about 1980, and Robert has decided to like stop treatment in whatever form that was coming in at the time, which is when he unfortunately took the life of his next victim, who has never been officially identified, which I find absolutely heartbreaking. That gets me.
Yeah.
Like the unidentified victims, there's nobody to mourn for them or give them a proper burial. That gets me.
No closure for the family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Her remains were discovered by some electrical workers who discovered a shallow grave next to a power line about 1 mile south of South Eklutna Lake Road in Anchorage. And this is believed to be the first time that Robert Hansen took a victim out into the wilderness and killed her. Even Celia, who was found having frozen to death, wasn't out in the wilderness to this extent. It's also believed that Robert hadn't initially planned to kill that night, consistent with his claim that he's never abducted women with the intention of murdering them. According to him, and we talked about this a little bit in part 1, the decision to kill only came if the woman behaved indecently in his eyes, at which point he felt justified in carrying out the fatal act. With this particular victim, who had become known as Eklutna Annie, because it's like a Jane Doe, right? But she was found in Eklutna, took a buck knife out of her purse and started swinging it at Robert after he began to sexually attack her. And then the situation escalated to the point of no return, and Robert killed her with her own knife.
Good for her, though.
Yes.
I feel like attacking people in Alaska is a crazy move.
What do you mean?
There's such a wilderness-focused people.
Yes.
And also taking someone out into the wilderness and risking getting eaten by a grizzly bear.
Not him. He's a hunter. He would invite the challenge.
Yeah, I think he's a little overconfident there.
Maybe.
You gonna kill a grizzly bear with a knife?
I mean, he always had his rifle with him too.
Oh, he did?
Always.
Oh, okay.
But I hear what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. Like attacking someone in Alaska is nuts. He's got a rifle on him.
Right,
You know
right.
I mean?
Yeah. Once Robert took Eklutna Annie's life, he discovered that he actually enjoyed killing. Because remember, Celia was alive when he left her in that ditch and she froze to death. So Eklutna Annie was technically the first victim that he intentionally killed, as far as we know. Interesting fact. Detective Maxine Farrell, who worked on Eklutna Annie's case, was the first woman ever hired by the Anchorage Police Department, joining the force in 1973.
Really?
Yeah, with an impressive solve rate of about 95%. She was an exceptional detective. Almost immediately, Maxine suspected Anchorage had a serial killer on the loose. And after taking it upon herself to sift through missing persons files and contact relatives, Maxine sounded the alarm to the fact that 10 young women had disappeared in the area. She went to her superiors with a spreadsheet that she put together by hand, outlining the victims' names, profiles, etc. Unfortunately, at the time, Maxine was quite literally laughed at and told she was wrong.
Oh my God, I hate when this happens.
Beyond. And if she's been in so many interviews, of course, that I've seen in books. And, for her, she's like, it's 100% because I was a woman.
Yeah.
Like, I was bringing them hard evidence to suggest that we had a serial killer, and I was literally laughed at. And she looked at the camera in one interview I saw, and she goes, I was not stupid. Or she goes, they called me stupid. And she looks at the camera, and she goes, but I was not stupid. It was good.
95% solve rate? That's very high, right?
She's a bad fucking ass. Yeah.
Maxine what?
Maxine Farrell. She was a detective in the homicide unit.
In Alaska.
Yeah, in Anchorage. Anyway, I wanted to just go off on that for a second. But eventually, when Eklutna Annie's remains were discovered, wild animals had removed most of the front half of her body. Even dental records could not be processed, as either a bear or a wolf had eaten the majority of her face.
Oh, my God.
But there was one stab wound discovered on her back that revealed that she'd been murdered. And later on, Robert wound up confessing to killing her.
Really?
He couldn't remember her name, but he claimed that she had either been a sex worker or an exotic dancer. They ended up doing, making like a 3D model type thing of her face, like doing facial reconstruction. And even after putting that out, nobody came forward to identify her.
Yeah.
It's just so fucking sad. Like, she still was someone's daughter. She still existed on this planet as a human being. And she's just nameless. Yeah. After experiencing the high from killing Eklutna Annie out in the wilderness, Robert was officially out for more human blood.
High is a crazy word to describe the feeling that he must have felt, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, imagine scratching an itch.
No, I mean, I don't think it's a high. I think it's a feeling. I think it's a very intense feeling that if you felt out of nowhere, you'd go, this isn't a high. This is horrible, the way I feel right now.
But in context?
It's like, it's a something.
I don't think it's horrible at all. I mean, I don't think he would say it's horrible.
No, he wouldn't. But a normal person, if they were overcome with that feeling of just absolute
intensity and
it's not a high. It's a low.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
6 months later, 24-year-old Roxanne Eastland was picked up by Robert Hansen on 4th Avenue in downtown Anchorage and became his next victim. Little is known about Roxanne's past except that she'd gone by a couple of aliases, and at least 2 weeks prior to her disappearance, she was staying at the Budget Motel on Spannard Road in Anchorage with her boyfriend. And this was one of the challenging aspects of many of the disappearances of the victims. They often went by aliases, like Enchantment or Angel, like really, really having nothing to do with their actual names.
Yeah.
And it made investigating their disappearances that much more challenging. And these were already transient people. Shortly after that, in 1980, Robert targeted Joanna Messina, a topless dancer who eventually agreed to meet Robert out for dinner after his relentless requests. His restaurant of choice? Wendy's.
Classy.
Once Joanna got into Robert's car, she made it clear that she was willing to engage in sexual acts for money. Okay? In Robert's mind, this shifted her from being a decent girl to being a bad girl, someone who, in his twisted worldview, deserved to be punished.
This guy's so annoying.
He's so annoying.
You'd think obviously he's taking out an exotic dancer.
Right, which doesn't make her a sex worker. But she thought that that's why he was
She thought she was doing the right thing by communicating clearly, like, hey, I know what's happening here. I just want to let you know, like, I am willing to whatever. And he's like, whoa, why would you think I want that?
What? Right.
Okay.
This is a crucial distinction because it just reveals how Robert justified his violence. He saw the women he targeted not as human beings, but as objects to be judged and categorized.
Yeah.
For those he deemed bad, again, often sex workers or women who rejected him, it was like just sort of different. It's like whatever in the moment he needed to justify.
Yeah, moving the goalposts.
Exactly.
Back, forward, or left or right.
Perfectly put. He felt entitled to administer punishment as though he was enacting some perverse form of justice. But he wasn't. He was just obviously fulfilling his sick desire to kill.
Yes.
In his mind, though, this rationalization made the horrific acts he committed not just acceptable, but necessary. This justification allowed him to disconnect from any sense of guilt or remorse, which enabled him to continue his killing spree without hesitation.
Yeah.
Out of the over 50 women that Robert Hansen ultimately admitted to taking out in the Alaskan wilderness during his active killing period, which occurred over the course of a 10-year period.
50, you said?
He took 50 women out into the wilderness over the course of 10 years.
Okay.
That was his active killing period, a decade.
Yeah.
17 of the 50 committed his idea of a betrayal and were murdered accordingly.
Did he murder 50 or he brought some women back?
Yeah. Some women not just, but some women he took out, he assaulted.
Oh, he always did that.
He always did that. But he only killed those that crossed some imaginary line and became indecent.
I don't know. This guy's abducting women, taking them out into the wilderness to administer some sort of like purity test.
Basically.
And if they don't pass based on his only current criteria, because it changed all the time.
A moving target.
He killed them.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So if he was taking a sex worker out and then she offered him money for sex acts and she wasn't a sex worker, all of a sudden she became bad because you're a dancer who I took out. Now you're offering to pay me for sex. You're indecent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Robert drove Joanna out into an abandoned, desolate area on the Kenai Peninsula, removed his .22 caliber pistol, and shot her from behind twice as she attempted to flee. Then he tossed Joanna's body over a cliff, covering her remains with gravel, and chucked his gun into the Snow River. She was just 24 years old and a trained nurse who had left her husband in New York and hitchhiked all the way to Alaska with her German Shepherd and assumed the name Joanna McCoy.
It's a lot of pickups.
Yeah. To me, it seems pretty clear that she was obviously running from something or somebody. Mm-hmm. But here's what's extra horrific with poor Joanna. Not only did a black bear initially consume her remains, but that same black bear reappeared at the scene of the crime after investigators discovered her body. The bear was there to finish what he'd started. The cops attempted to scare off the bear, but he kept approaching, each step getting more aggressive. So a decision had to be made between preserving the crime scene or protecting the bear. Mm-hmm. And initially, they chose the bear over the sex worker. Eventually, they did wind up shooting the bear.
Well, she was dead.
She was, but he was there to eat her remains and destroy the crime scene. So their goal of finding who did this to her and bringing her justice was secondary to the bear.
They didn't know she was a sex worker at the time, and I don't think that played into it at all.
You don't think so?
No.
He was an endangered bear.
So even more.
Right.
I just think that shooting a wild animal for doing what wild animals do is murder. And you probably, especially in an area like that where they value wildlife so much, that if she was alive, obviously they're going to shoot the bear, 100%. But she's definitely already dead. I don't know, whatever. I feel like I know why they did that. And I don't know if it had to do with her being a sex worker because I don't even think they knew that at the time.
I don't know. I'm not about shooting animals ever.
Yeah, no, I know.
But I don't know. It feels like, when you do the research on it, it's like very clear that they were like, it's just a dead body. Like maybe it was the way it was handled, like the approach that was taken, that when you read about it, that
very true.
Rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
But maybe the decision itself was still the right decision. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
After that, though, Joanna Messina was only referred to as the Bear Lady.
Oh, that's
fucked up. She lost her identity after that, and like they were fucking around about it.
Yeah, so maybe I was wrong.
No, I think your general point is well taken. His next victim was a 28-year-old dancer named Malai Larson. It took 3 years for her body to be discovered in a parking lot, discarded and decomposed. A few months after that, Robert abducted 41-year-old Lisa Futrell, a woman he'd met at a nightclub, and then abducted, raped, and murdered. Lisa's remains remained undiscovered for another 4 years. A few weeks later, 24-year-old Andrea Altieri became Hansen's next victim. She was taken down by a single gunshot to the back of her head with a .22 Browning pistol. Robert then tied a duffel bag filled with gravel around Andrea's ankle and threw her off the side of a bridge. So following this escalation, which again is typical for serial killers, Robert entered a 1-year cool-down period where he continued to rape sex workers but did not kill them. However, the urge became too overwhelming to suppress, and on November 17th, Robert resumed killing.
I'm doing great. I'm not doing heroin. I'm just doing cocaine.
Weren't you just talking about that too? You said you were talking to somebody who's like, oh yeah, no, I don't do cocaine anymore. And he killed like 6 drinks in like 2 minutes.
Yeah. I'm clean now. Well, that's up for debate. But do we think that the cool down period was him trying not to kill, maybe?
I don't think so. I don't think it was. I think a lot of it also had to do with when his family was around, because they would be gone for summers. He would always send them out in the summers.
Okay.
Not that, November is not summer.
Yeah.
I don't think it had to do with that. I think it's classic for serial killers to have the cool down period, and it's not because they're trying to like better themselves. It's just psychological. He lured 23-year-old Sherry Morrow, a waitress and dancer at the Wild Cherry Club, into his car under the pretense of a date.
I remember the Wild Cherry from the original list of names.
Oh, okay, good.
Booby trap.
That's right. Very good. Once she was inside, he blindfolded her with an ace bandage, something he later admitted made him feel powerful and masculine, and then drove her to a remote shack he owned along the Connect River. By this point, Robert was posing as a photographer, claiming to specialize in erotic photo shoots to entice his victims into his car.
Hey, bro, why don't you get a job, go to work every day, come home, be nice to your wife and kids, be there for your sons if they get sad, or daughters.
Son and daughter.
Whatever. Do that. That might make you feel like masculine also.
Right.
You know, like just doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done for the people who need doing for. That makes me feel like a man.
Yeah, well, he's twisted. And his idea of masculinity is physically overpowering, dominating, taking what he wants, assaulting, and killing.
Wow.
Whole other bag of tricks.
Wow.
After raping Sherry Morrow, something triggered Robert's twisted belief that she was now a bad girl in his deranged mind. As he later indicated, something went wrong.
After killing her.
After killing her, he said something went wrong when he was like reflecting on why he killed her. Why did she become a bad girl? Something went wrong.
Yeah, just a feeling.
Suddenly, he coldly informed her that she was going to die, a chilling escalation in the psychological nature of his behavior.
Yeah.
And for the first time, Robert openly declared his intentions to a victim and saw the impact that had on her. And this shift reflected another disturbing element of his pathology, which was his growing sadistic desire to instill terror in his victims.
Yeah.
By revealing their fate, he heightened their panic, which in turn fueled his twisted sense of power and control, making the act of murder even more gratifying.
Yeah, you get off on that, bro? You feel like a real man?
Exactly. That's the like humor. That's not the right word in all of this. It's
irony?
Like irony. Yeah, like you think that these things make you more masculine. There's not a bigger bitch ass out there.
Yeah. You're overpowering, manipulating, raping, assaulting, and killing women.
Right.
Wow.
Just those acts.
What a man.
Exactly. Robert offered Sherry what he chillingly called her one chance at survival. It was not a mercy, far from it. Instead, it was the beginning of a deadly game that he would play thereafter with every victim.
Is this the one from the beginning?
He told her she'd be hunted like an animal, blindfolded and with her hands bound.
Oh my God.
Sherry was given a head start into the dense Alaskan woods.
Just fucking kill me.
Robert's cold voice instructed her to run. If she somehow managed to outpace the .223 caliber bullet from his Ruger Mini 14 hunting rifle, she could live. But the odds were never in her favor.
I mean, you gotta be, I would just be running into trees, falling down, like,
I mean,
blindfolded.
It was obviously just a pretense. There was no actual shot here. The fear Sherry must have felt.
Oh my God, I can't.
Stumbling through the wilderness, knowing that death was just a heartbeat away.
But also heartbreakingly thinking that she might be able to escape.
Unimaginable. And as expected, she didn't make it far. Robert stalked her with the precision of a seasoned hunter, because indeed he was. Her body was later found in a shallow gravel grave right where she'd been murdered by a bullet through her heart. In his arrogance, Robert made a critical mistake. He left the bullet casing at the scene. That casing would later become the crucial link investigators needed to connect his crimes to each other and, most importantly, to tie the bullets to the rifle that he used in his sadistic hunts.
Okay, good. I like when these fuckers get sloppy.
They always do.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say always, because I'm sure there's people who aren't caught. But by and large, the ones we know about were caught because they got fucking sloppy.
Yeah.
But this wouldn't happen just yet, unfortunately. And sadly, he'd go on to kill at least 3 more confirmed innocent women. But it was after Sherry's partially decomposed bone joint was discovered popping out of the ground by 2 off-duty police officers named John Daly and Audie Holloway that an official investigation was finally launched. Because at this point, the only other dead body they had was that belonging to a Clutna Annie a couple of years prior. Because remember, so many of the girls were never found.
Hey, you're out in the wilderness. They're getting eaten.
Yep. Still, investigators made their first connection between the 2 crimes, and that was the type of grave that the victims were buried in. Shallow gravel graves in the remote Alaskan wilderness. This distinct burial method and location began to hint at a pattern, suggesting, I'm going to say not for the first time, because the detective Maxine tried to sound the alarm about this, that they were dealing with a methodical killer operating in the same unforgiving landscape, or a serial killer. Mm. Until this point, though, even the media outlets were publishing articles saying that there was nothing to indicate that the disappearances and known murders were anything other than coincidence, meaning they were not connected. But additionally, a .223 caliber shell casing was also discovered with Sherry's remains. Remember I said it was Joanna's remains as well?
Yeah.
After Sherry's murder, Robert Hansen made a pivotal decision. Pop quiz.
Really?
What did he resolve to do after each future murder he committed?
First pop quiz buried quite deep in the case, by the way.
Sometimes it'd be like that.
Okay.
We need a little runway. What did he resolve to do after each future murder he committed?
Okay.
A, collect a trophy. B, rape the corpse. C, eat a piece of flesh.
C.
Nope.
Gross.
Yep.
Your brain is disgusting.
Yep.
A.
Yes. So from Sherry, he took a golden arrow necklace. Remember this. So from this point forward, Robert decided to take a physical trophy from each of his victims, usually jewelry or IDs, as a twisted keepsake.
So not body parts?
No.
Okay.
Sometimes he'd even give the stolen jewelry to his wife and daughter.
Oh my God.
Who were oblivious to the horrors that they represented. This decision, the trophy collecting, would ultimately come back to bite him in his pathetic, gross, probably droopy ass.
Good.
As Robert ramped up his killing spree, his bank account took a sharp downturn. After Sherry's murder, financial troubles once again crept in, causing him to make a calculated decision. Pop quiz. So they may come in late, but they come in hot.
Wow.
What did Robert do to bring in extra money, and for what specific purpose? Okay? Since he certainly was not, supporting his family with the extra money.
Giving your wife jewelry that you took off of a dead woman's body that you killed is just next to the nth degree level twisted.
He got a thrill every time he saw them wearing it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yep. All right, so what did Robert do to bring in extra money, and for what specific purpose?
Okay.
A, Robert stole jewelry from the local pawn shop to resell and then used the money to purchase additional weaponry.
Okay. Pawn shop for weaponry. Pawn jewelry for weaponry.
B, Robert hid valuable items in his backyard to fake a robbery and then used the insurance money to purchase a plane.
Insurance scam, okay.
C, Robert became a survival guide and took people deep into the woods and then used the money to finance sex workers.
Wow, okay. So pawn jewelry for
weapons,
insurance scam, burying stuff, insurance money, or become a tour guide. People deep into the fucking woods. Oh my God. Oh my God. Pawning jewelry for weaponry.
No.
Taking people deep into the woods.
No.
Finance sex workers.
Nope.
Well, why don't you just tell me what you want to say?
Okay, I will. He buried the taxidermy animal heads that he'd won in various hunting and marksmanship competitions in a hole in his backyard, faked a break-in, and collected $13,000 in insurance money. Then, with that payout, he purchased a Piper PA-18 Super Cub, which is a single-engine prop plane that gave him the ability to venture much farther out into the vast Alaskan wilderness. So now this fucking idiot has a plane.
Yeah, can you imagine the insurance claim adjuster at the house?
Oh my God.
So, just the heads? They left the guitar, like they just took the animal heads.
What about the diamonds over there?
Yeah, man, I don't know. The guy was really into fucking my trophies. I think he was like, I think I beat him. I think he got number 35 in the competition.
Now, here's where things get even more absurd,
This
okay?
is all so crazy.
If you can't make it up, Robert Hansen had been denied a pilot's license because he'd technically been prescribed lithium to treat his supposed bipolar, a condition that he may or may not have had. Yet, despite being grounded, he flew anyway. How, you ask? Well, he simply painted the ID numbers on his plane so small that air traffic control couldn't read them. Then, when they radioed him to ask for his plane's ID number, Hansen would simply rattle off the numbers from another aircraft, evading detection and continuing his deadly excursions undisturbed.
I mean, if you put half the effort into your mental health and therapy and like really figuring things out, you could have solved world peace. Like you could have cured cancer.
But he's helping the world. He's taking all the bad girls out.
He's helping his world.
Right, of course. But in his fucked up mind, he's justified. There's nothing he has to fix. He doesn't have to work on himself. You should be saying thank you.
The plane thing is nuts.
It's nuts. Robert also purchased a cabin by the Connect River, which was really just a meat shack with a metal bar and chains hanging from the ceiling on which to dry out freshly killed moose. Yeah, I was going to say meese.
Are you kidding?
Yes, I'm kidding.
Moosin! Saw a flock of moosin out in the woods. In the woods. Meese wanting food. Food's eating, is it? Meese wanting fooding and wooding, is it?
What have I done?
Unleashed the greatest punchline of all time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Brian Regan, Stupid in School. Look it up on Spotify.
Oh, that's probably where I got it from.
Yes.
Okay, because you've done this before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Because the question before, she asked the smart kid, what is the plural for goose? Well, first she says, what is the plural for ox? Owen says oxen. Then she says, Brian, what is the plural for box? Boxen. Then what is the plural for goose? Geese. I saw a flock of geese. Brian, what? What is the plural for moose? Moosin? I mean...
Brilliant.
Bro, yeah. Okay. All right. Off track.
Okay.
Back on track.
Okay. Sue Luna, Tamara Penderson, and Angela Lynn Federn were Robert's next three victims.
Sue Lua? Is that what you said?
Sue Luna.
Sue Luna.
Tamara Penderson.
Okay.
And Angela Lynn Federn.
Got it.
Robert had actually flown Angela 126 miles away from where he abducted her around the Gulf of Alaska to a small body of water just off the Figure 8 Lake. Then he hunted her through the wilderness before killing her.
Fuck.
After that, Dylan Renee Frey, Teresa Watson, Paula Goulding, and Robin Pelkey were all abducted, raped, and killed. We're going to circle back to Paula Goulding, so when I bring it up, don't be confused about timeline.
Okay.
Though not all were believed to have been taken in the plane and to the meat shack.
Okay.
Robin's partial skeletal remains were eventually found and indicated that she'd been shot down and then finished off with a knife. Ultimately, 17 girls and women were confirmed to have been slaughtered by Robert Hansen, 12 of whom he is believed to have hunted in the wilderness. So he didn't do that clearly with all of the victims, right? That's why one was found in a parking lot.
Right.
Exactly. But it would be Hansen's underestimation of his final victim that would ultimately wind up taking him down.
Nice.
His last known victim was a 17-year-old girl and sex worker named Cindy Paulson, who was propositioned by Robert offering $200 for oral sex on 5th and Denali on June 11th, 1983. And that was much higher than the going rate in Anchorage at the time, so Cindy hopped in the car. For some reason, perhaps due to her young age or the fact that he was getting sloppy and arrogant, as all serial killers do, Robert decided to bring Cindy back to his suburban home in Anchorage.
With his wife and kids there?
Nope. Darla and the kids were on a trip to Europe, so he had the house.
Okay.
Real quick, pop quiz.
All right.
What did Robert do after he sent his family to Europe for the summer?
Okay.
A, place a singles ad in the newspaper looking for women.
Singles ad.
B, hosted a sex party.
Singles ad, sex party.
C, burnt down his church.
Singles ad, sex party, burnt down his church. A.
Yes, sir. It's ridiculous. The Sunday Singles was a dating service in the Anchorage Daily News. And this is what his ad said. You read it.
Oh, God.
It's in red.
Okay. Adventurous male looking for a lady proud to be a woman, to share sincere, honest attachment, must like to dance and enjoy social life, willing to put on jeans, join me in finding what's around the next bend, over the next hill, enjoy flying, own plane, beach, combing, fishing, camping, life is beautiful, much fuller if shared, probably gonna kill ya, not sure yet. If you're a decent woman, I might not.
Tank added that last line.
The last 3 lines.
Creative liberties there.
I mean, bro, like this guy is... I want this case to be like 8 parts.
It probably should have been. Can I just take a minute?
Yes.
Can you just indulge me here?
Yeah.
If this case seems scattered, I really hope it doesn't. I really did my best to organize it. If it seems scattered, it's because it is.
Yes.
He abducted women, killed, did things out of order from when their remains were discovered, from when law enforcement knew about it.
This guy was not a brilliant serial killer. He was empowered by the fucking stupid police force.
In many ways, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. With this singles ad, Robert claims he was looking for someone he could be close to, a warm relationship, a good close friend. One woman who responded to the ad, named Karen O'Leary, actually went back to Robert's house with him and recalled that his own dog ran into the closet to hide from him when he walked in. Robert asked Karen if she wanted to make love to him on his bear rug, to which she said no.
I wonder if he smells like death to that dog.
Yeah, maybe. And I think that this may have just saved Karen's life, the fact that she said no, because I feel like if she had said yes, then maybe she would have failed Robert's decency test and he would have killed her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Lose-lose.
It is. And I'm trying to get in his head and figure, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Do that.
No, I don't want to do that. Because I've done it for this research.
Yeah.
It's a dark place. Anyway, once inside his family home with Cindy Paulson, okay, now the 17-year-old sex worker that he abducted and brought back to his house, Robert overpowered her and chained her to a pillar in the basement for 5 hours, surrounded by animal heads, because I guess he didn't bury all of them. Mm-hmm. The chain wrapped around her neck rendered her immobile or even really able to scream. What came next was a combination of sexual assault and sadistic torture, followed by Robert taking an hours-long nap in front of her on a couch.
While she's chained up by her neck?
Yup, after he assaulted her.
Yeah.
When he woke up, Robert grabbed his pistol, unchained Cindy, and instructed her to get dressed. Then he forced Cindy at gunpoint into his car so that he could drive them to Merrill Field Airstrip, as he informed her that he was planning to take her to his cabin. As Cindy lay bound in the back seat, she deliberately kicked off her baby blue sneakers, hoping someone would find them and connect Robert to what she feared might be her last moments. Because as Cindy indicated later, spoiler, thank goodness she survived, after what he did to me, he had to kill me. Yet despite knowing in her gut that Robert was going to kill her, or likely because of that, an instinct to survive surged within her. After Robert opened the car door, Cindy, barefoot and fully aware that he couldn't fire his gun without drawing attention because they were at the airstrip now, made a desperate dash for freedom. In an incredible display of courage, she sprinted all the way to the street where she flagged down a truck being driven by a man named Robert Yount. Yount, seeing a terrified young woman with handcuffs dangling from her wrists, barefoot in the freezing Alaskan air and screaming for help, immediately stopped and picked her up. Cindy asked to be dropped off at the Timber Inn Motel where she claimed that she'd be meeting her boyfriend. But Yount dropped Cindy off at the Mush Inn Motel.
What?
Yep, that's really what it's called instead. And concerned for her safety, decided to call the Anchorage Police Department.
Wait, why did he drop her off at a different motel?
I think it was closer.
Oh, okay.
Officer Greg Baker, crazy ironic last name for him to have, responded to the call and took Cindy back to the police station. There, she provided a detailed description of her attacker, along with identifying his car and plane, which would later be crucial in building the case against Robert Hansen.
Yeah.
So, Robert Hansen was picked up by law enforcement. Pop quiz, wow. Surprised myself there. What happened when they picked him up? A, Robert attempted to flee, leading to a highway chase with Jake. B, Robert went with the officers willingly and without hassle. C, Robert drew his .22, leading to a physical takedown and to one of the officers being shot and killed in the process.
B.
Yeah. Yeah.
The arrogance.
The arrogance is right. And I say he left willingly because hitherto he'd always gotten off with just a slap on the wrist when it came to his word against that of a sex worker's.
Yeah.
He even willingly allowed the cops to conduct a cursory search of his house, car, and plane without a warrant. That's how confident and cocky he was that he'd be fine. Moreover, Robert also claimed that he'd been with two different friends fixing an airplane seat during the time in which Cindy said she was attacked in his basement, a claim or lie, obviously, that Robert even had his friends corroborate, which provided him with a false alibi. So he thinks, like, I'm completely in the clear here.
Yeah.
Inside one of his vehicles, which was a green Buick sedan, cops found rifles, cartridges, surgical gloves, ace bandages, and several Conway Twitty cassette tapes.
Ooh.
Yeah. Additionally, inside Robert Hansen's home, they indeed saw the pillar in the basement that Cindy had so perfectly described, along with the foosball table that she also perfectly described.
Okay.
After that, Cindy also went on to positively ID Robert Hansen in a lineup.
Yeah.
Now, technically, because he had an alibi, many of the cops wanted to drop the case. Furthermore, when law enforcement went into their low-tech 1983 computer system to run Robert's criminal history, nothing came up as the Anchorage Police Department had been in the process of transferring all of their records into a new system. So there was nothing there coming up for Robert. So, why bother, right? Especially since, according to Robert, it was impossible to rape a prostitute.
Yeah.
So they go into a system. They have nothing to point their finger to in the way of him having a past. It's a sex worker, so you can't trust her.
Automatically, like 80% less.
Exactly.
Valuable.
And he's got an alibi.
So what can we do?
Case closed, you know what I mean? And with that, the case was closed.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my
Thankfully. And we're coming to the end-ish. The case eventually made its way to the Alaska State Troopers Investigative Unit, landing on the desk of Alaska State Trooper Sergeant Lyle Hogsfin.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Maxine.
No, but she was there. She was working this.
Yeah.
But this state trooper was the same officer who had been in charge of Sherry Morrow's case less than a year earlier and who had discovered the shell casing near her remains. And as he dug deeper and began to piece together the puzzle, the picture became clearer. And because he's a man, people would listen. In September 1983, troopers discovered yet another body. Remember I said Paula Goulding, that we were going to circle back to her?
Yeah.
near the Kinnick River in a remote location accessible only by boat or aircraft. Crucially, they also found another .223 caliber shell casing at the scene, fired from the same gun that killed Sherry, further linking the murders and bringing them closer to unraveling the full scope of Hansen's crimes.
Okay.
Paula was just 30 years old, and she'd been working as a dancer for about 1 week when Robert noticed her at the Alaskan Bush Company Club. She had only just been able to remove all of her clothing on stage. Literally, that was the first night she'd done that, the night that Robert Hansen was there, because she was shy, nervous, and very uncomfortable about being a dancer. Yeah. But she had no other choice, and she needed the money. According to her former roommate, Paula was a beautiful person, very funny, and she just wanted to make it in life. In fact, the reason why she even got into Robert's car in the first place was because he told her that he was a photographer and that he could help her to get out of the dancing industry.
Yeah.
Now, after the shell casing was found with her body, the case was officially handed over to a really meticulous, detail-oriented, badass detective named Glenn Floethy of the Alaska State Troopers Investigative Unit. This is the same man who was later portrayed by Nicolas Cage in the film Frozen Ground, which is based on this case.
What?
Now it's a much cooler case for you, isn't it?
Well, Nicolas Cage is...
a national treasure. Ish.
Is he in the movie National Treasure?
Oh my God, I don't know.
I don't know, but he has like the ability to really. There's a couple like Family Man. Have you ever seen that movie?
No.
It's like a modern day It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh.
I cannot watch that movie without just crying my eyeballs out. He's so good. City of Angels.
Never saw it. I do play Uninvited on the piano and wish to perform it live one day.
You're banned from playing that song until you see the movie.
I should show you my playlist right now on Spotify, like the last 10 songs I've listened to, and Uninvited is in there.
That movie is one of the most heartbreaking movies.
That's why I haven't seen it, bro.
You'll ever see.
It's not for me. It's just not.
It was.
I know.
But also, just to, we'll get back to the case. Leaving Las Vegas was a movie that I tried to watch like within my first year or two of sobriety. It's a movie about him going to drink himself to death in Las Vegas. And I had to turn it off after like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because he was so good in it.
So you were like relating?
You were like watching this man die.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So for the first time in Robert Hansen's decade-long killing spree, Detective Floethy put together all the puzzle pieces to finally reveal a clear picture of the horrific truth. When he was done, that picture included the names of at least 10 sex workers, all of whom shared similarities in age and appearance, who had either gone missing or turned up dead around Anchorage and had arranged to meet a man offering them more money than usual for transactional sex. At this point, Detective Floethy, Detective Hogsvin, and Officer Greg Baker all joined forces. I've mentioned all three of those by this point. And Floethy made a decisive move. He contacted the FBI for assistance, convinced now, finally, that they were dealing with a serial killer. This led them to none other than John Douglas, the legendary founder of the Behavioral Analyst Unit, I said that weird, and a pioneer of criminal profiling.
John Douglas.
Yeah, Mindhunters.
Oh.
Yeah. When Douglas stepped in, he reportedly said, "First tell me about the crimes, and I'll tell you about the guy." After examining all of the evidence provided to him by the Anchorage detectives, John Douglas created a profile of the perpetrator that wound up serving as the backbone of the state troopers' investigation. In fact, this was the first time in U.S. history that a behavioral profile had been issued based on a warrant.
Wow.
So interesting. And listen to the profile that John Douglas crafted, okay?
Okay.
And he actually talks about this in Mindhunter, the book.
Really? Oh, the book. Okay.
The book. Okay. Listen to this profile. He has no idea who Robert Hansen is. He has no idea who the serial killer is. He's basing his profile on what he's piecing together.
Mm-hmm.
This is the profile. The perpetrator would have collected trophies from his victims so that he could revisit the twisted thrill of killing them.
Okay.
The perpetrator would be an experienced hunter with a long history of being rejected by women. The perp would be a white male appearing as normal as possible, but for having some kind of defect like a lisp or a stutter.
Wow.
The perpetrator would have likely had bad skin as a teenager. I shit you not. The perp is likely married to a religious woman who remains oblivious to his wrongdoings. The perp is an upstanding member of the community. And lastly, the perp most likely used a plane to get around to more isolated areas where the killings would actually take place. I mean, this profile slaps.
Oh, yeah, his profile is skibbity.
It is. It is.
W profile.
Yo, I get so hyped up. It's incredible. So fucking fascinating.
Oh, it's so good. That's a good one.
That
deserves all the stuff you're doing right now.
Yeah, I'm sweating now.
Yeah.
John Douglas makes me sweat. This profile, coupled with Cindy Paulson's testimony and the information that came through finally on law enforcement's nifty new computer system, led a judge to issue an official search warrant for a deeper, more systematic look at Robert's plane, home, and vehicles on October 27th, 1983. While nothing was found in his plane or his car, not even Cindy's baby blue sneakers, which he had the foresight to dispose of, still, she was so smart for doing that, he ultimately fucked up, like many serial killers before him, because during the search of his home, officers discovered in the upstairs bedroom, nestled behind the headboard of his bed, an aerial map of the Knik River region marked by no fewer than 37 ominous X's, many of which aligned with the locations of where dead bodies had already been discovered. Apparently, Robert would masturbate to the map, which is why it was behind his headboard.
What a freak.
Then venturing into
How are you going to explain this, Robert? It's just all the places I've jerked off in
in the Knik region. Then venturing into the attic, investigators peeled back the floorboards and insulation, and I saw a picture of this. It's like literally inside the insulation to uncover 2 firearms, including a hunting rifle that matched the 22 caliber Ruger Mini 14 semi-automatic rifle shell casings.
Go to jail.
Recovered near the river, which Robert used to kill many of his victims, as well as there being many other weapons. Although an exact match was impossible to make due to the time that had elapsed, it was definitively determined that the weapon was the same model, if not the exact gun itself, found in his attic, to matching it to the shell casings.
Then they were like, but they were sex workers, so...
But he's our baker.
Yeah, I mean, he's got good bread and muffins. I don't know.
And Maxine, she said it was going to be a serial killer, and she's a woman.
She's a dumb broad.
So, like, nah.
Yeah, it can't be him. This is all a crazy coincidence. Bob, I'm sorry to bother you, buddy.
As if this weren't enough, they also stumbled upon a plastic bag brimming with women's jewelry that wound up being linked to several of the victims through witness testimony and/or photographs of the women actually wearing the jewelry. And amongst the items discovered was, do you remember I told you to remember?
A golden arrow.
Very good, Tank. Good Lord. Yo, do you take fish oil? Your memory's insane.
You know what?
You do?
No, I started taking this stuff called magnetic mind.
Yo, you should be fucking Magneto. Because you said magnetic.
Yeah.
For Halloween.
Yeah, there's like this, I take NeuroPS, you know that?
Yeah.
But magnetic mind is like,
hook
the
me
synergy
up.
is crazy.
Yeah, send me a link. The gold arrow necklace from Sherry Morrow.
Okay.
And lastly, tire marks from Robert's plane had been discovered near remote cabins that had all recently been burgled.
Burgled.
Yeah, I wanted to say that word. I'm surprised I said it.
It's a fantastic word.
Yeah.
Burgled.
Burgered. I didn't even fuck it up. Like, yay me. At this stage, police had Robert Hansen in custody while they searched his home, though of course he steadfastly maintained his innocence, claiming that he'd never intentionally hurt anyone in his entire life. When they asked him why, this is good, why he was picking up sex workers if he had a wife at home, he responded, and I quote, "I wanted oral sex, okay? I guess maybe it's an old-fashioned idea or whatever, but it's something I would never, under no circumstances ever, want my wife to perform, okay?"
I'm a pure being, a perfect little angel. Exactly. I would never make my wife do that. I will hire someone to do it and then kill them.
Right.
But
I am a stand-up husband, if nothing else.
A step too far.
Ridiculous. so he's maintaining his innocence, until the aerial map marked with all those different X's was laid out on the table before him, many of which correlated with the victim list that Detective Flothi had come up with. And in that moment, Robert Hansen transformed from Bob the innocent baker to Robert Hansen, the ruthless butcher baker.
Really?
Because after releasing an audible sigh, Robert confessed to killing those bitches because they had it coming.
The jig was up.
And insisted that he was doing society a favor by eliminating what he referred to as leeches and whores. Now, while he confessed to abducting and sexually assaulting countless women, Robert, on February 16th, 1984, only ever confessed to murdering 4.
Okay.
Sherry Morrow, Joanna Messina, Paula Goulding, and Aklutna Annie.
Okay.
And so, Robert Hansen, a.k.a. the Butcher Baker, a.k.a. Bob, faced charges for 4 murders alongside the kidnapping and rape of Cindy Paulson.
Yeah.
Additionally, he was charged with insurance fraud after authorities uncovered the trophies he buried in his backyard.
Just throw it on top of the charges.
It's silly, but yes. As you can imagine, the media went apeshit over this case. Serial killers were a hot topic of the time, and the fact that Robert hunted his victims made for absolutely terrifying and gripping headlines.
Yeah.
In fact, 8 years after his arrest in 1996, the character Ramsay Bolton was created in George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series. And 20 years after that, Ramsay's character was featured in the HBO series Game of Thrones.
Wait, I'm sorry. What is Ramsay?
Ramsay Bolton, do you remember him?
No, who is that associated with in this case?
Robert Hansen. He hunted women. Ramsay Bolton would literally hunt women in the Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Terrifying scenes. I remember them.
Yeah.
I'd like you, Tank, to read part of the closing statement that was read by the prosecution at Robert's trial. Okay?
Okay.
It's in red.
Before you sits a monster, an extreme aberration of a human being, a man who walked among us for 17 years, serving us donuts, Danish, and coffee with a pleasant smile. His family was a prop. He hid behind decency. This hunter, who kept trophies on the wall now, has trophies scattered throughout South Central Alaska. And while he doesn't talk about it or admit to it, it's obvious from looking at where things started and where women ended up, he hunted them down. He'd let them run a little bit, and he enjoyed a hunt, just like with his big game animals. I nailed that.
Yeah, give the
You want me to do it again?
Oscar to Tank. On February 22nd, 1984, Robert Hansen had his defense attorney, Fred Dewey, arrange a meeting with Anchorage DA Victor Crum. And during this meeting, DA Crum offered Hansen a deal, which Robert accepted in exchange for sparing his family from a public trial.
Oh, nice.
As part of the plea deal, Robert would aid law enforcement in locating the other bodies marked on his aeronautical map, with the agreement that he would not be charged with any further crimes. In addition, he would be placed in a federal prison rather than a maximum security facility, and the press would be excluded from all legal proceedings. Hansen accompanied law enforcement agents to the Anchorage International Airport, where they boarded a large military helicopter to head out along the Connect River. Afterwards, they flew east to Jim Creek and then west towards Susitna. Their final stops were due south at Horseshoe Lake and Figure 8 Lake. So they went everywhere. At every stop, Hansen led investigators to the places where he literally buried bodies, now heavily covered in snow, and they would mark the trees with orange paint.
Oh, he was actually helping find the bodies. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, he wasn't doing it to help them. Listen to this. While Hansen revisited the grave sites in the Alaskan wilderness, he appeared disturbingly giddy, eagerly trotting through the snow like a fucking, Arctic fox, and digging at the burial sites with his bare hands. He positively relished the opportunity to revisit his macabre handiwork and took a twisted satisfaction in seeing the reactions of those around him.
Yeah.
17 separate graves were uncovered in the following weeks, 12 of which had been entirely unknown to the investigation prior to Robert guiding law enforcement to them.
Wow.
In the end, On February 27th, 1984, Superior Court Judge Ralph E. Moody sentenced Robert Hansen to 461 years behind bars plus life in prison without the possibility of parole.
A little bit of a light sentence, but...
He never appealed, never provided media interviews, and only cooperated in interviews with John Douglas as he conducted various studies on Robert at the Spring Creek Correctional Center in Seward, Alaska. There is a master class, which I will be watching, that John Douglas gives.
Oh, that's what you told me about?
Yes, I haven't watched it yet.
Oh.
But there's a masterclass where he discusses the Robert Hansen profile.
Like masterclass?
It's 14 minutes long.
No, but I mean, is it on the site masterclass?
I believe it is.
I have like a lifetime membership.
Oh, you would. You would. Now, Robert Hansen did go on to take a job inside prison.
Okay.
PQ.
Quiz. Yes.
Yes, King. What did Robert Hansen do for work during his incarceration? A, he was a preacher. B, he was a chef. C, he was a barber.
No baker?
Chef. They bake in prison. They might cook. We know they have to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, they're probably not baking cookies in there.
Yeah, there's no fresh donuts.
Yeah. Okay, so preacher.
Chef or barber.
Chef or barber. Preacher?
No.
Okay.
God, no.
What is that?
He got it. He left. Preacher, God, no.
Oh.
Whatever. I'm losing it.
Okay. Barber.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Give this fucking guy a knife and sharp objects and scissors. What? Okay. Just wanted to make that a PQ because I found it astounding.
Yes.
So the FBI has classified Robert Hansen as an organized killer. His horrific crimes were well planned. They had a particular routine that he stuck to and a specific modus operandi. But let's talk psychology within the framework of something new for us, Tank, called the Sharia syndrome model, created by psychiatrists and forensic experts Christer Klaus and Lars Lidberg.
Okay.
This is fascinating shit.
Can't wait.
The Sharia syndrome model is a conceptual framework that explains the psychological functioning of serial killers.
Okay.
It's a model based on 5 primitive psychic mechanisms that are thought to be present in serial killers. Okay. Omnipotence, sadistic fantasies, ritualized performance, dehumanization, and symbiotic merger.
Don't know what that last one is.
Okay, we're going to get to it. 1, omnipotence. The definition, by the way, of omnipotence is the quality of having unlimited or very great power.
Yes.
With respect to this model, this refers to the insatiable desire to regain lost power, which may have resulted from an early lack of autonomy or control during infancy and or childhood.
Yeah.
We know that Robert was raised by a domineering father and a mother who constantly acquiesced to her husband's iron fist.
Yeah.
He never really learned to exert himself and was often forced to work extremely long hours at his dad's bakery, constantly reminded that he was powerless and never the one in control of his life. Robert was also constantly rejected by girls and bullied by peers. This upbringing helped to lay the foundation for his need to exert total control over all of his victims. Additionally, Robert was often arrested, as we know, for shoplifting, but never charged really with any of those crimes except the chainsaw one.
Yeah.
This only further intensified his feelings of omnipotence.
Oh, yeah.
Right? 2, sadistic fantasies. This obviously refers to fantasies of inflicting either physical or psychological pain on another.
Or both.
Or both, exactly. That significantly arouses sexual or non-sexual pleasure within an individual.
Okay.
Now, Klaus and Lidberg further argue that sadism and related sadistic fantasies are a projection of one's own unresolved primitive aggression. By the age of 21, Robert Hansen was starting to nurse intense fantasies about revenge, whether at the entire school system when he burned down the bus garage, or all the girls who had ever rejected him. Of course, raping, hunting, and murdering women all point to his sadistic fantasies. 3, ritualized performance. As I mentioned, Robert Hansen hunted at least 12 of his victims in the Knik River region just outside Anchorage. He would often stalk his prey, lure them into his vehicle, kidnap them, and then take them to a second location. Once there, he would sexually assault them before releasing them under the promise that he'd let them live if they complied with his demands or if they continued to behave as good girls, which would almost never happen, causing Robert to see them as bad girls who deserved to be killed. He would hunt them, He would kill them. This was his ritualized performance.
Yes.
He would also take a trophy, which became part of the ritual.
Mm-hmm.
4, dehumanization. Listen, this is among serial killers, it's evident typically in how they perceive their victims as being less than human. They are often equating their victims to animals, objects, or machines.
Objects, yeah.
Right. It is this psychological detachment that enables them to inflict extreme cruelty without the burden of empathy or guilt, treating their victims as disposable rather than as people with lives and emotions. And this last one, 5, symbiotic merger. Hansen likely begrudged his mother as he was so dependent on her, and she essentially failed him. Symbiotic merger occurs when the killer later attempts to achieve a fusion or a binding with his victim physically and may include sexual intercourse, sodomy, or ingesting the blood or organs of the victim. With Robert Hansen, he was constantly attempting to form a shared identity with another. That happened even before he started killing. Interestingly, his wife was not someone who he could do this with, as she was a good girl, and in order to feel satisfied, he needed to form a shared identity with bad girls. Klaus and Lidberg further assert that when a serial killer collects trophies from his victims, as Hansen did, this serves to reinforce their merged identity.
Yeah. What was it called? Symbiotic what again?
Merger.
Symbiotic merger. Wow, that's...
interesting shit.
I was just going to say.
Really?
Well, not shit, because I'm not crude.
You're not vulgar.
You
You weren't raised on the streets.
I'm decent.
Eventually, on August 21st, 2014, Robert Christian Hansen died of natural causes at age 75 at the Alaska Regional Hospital.
Okay.
So he was incarcerated until he was 75.
Yeah.
Not long enough.
Damn, not the whole 461 years, huh?
How dare he?
Yeah.
How dare?
Gotta do at least 80% of that, bro.
But it's the deaths of the 17 women he killed that we should remember and honor.
Yeah.
Megan Emmerich, Mary Thill, Horseshoe Harriet, Eklutna Annie, Roxanne Eastland, Joanna Messina, Lisa Futrell, Sherry Morrow, Andrea Altieri, Sue Luna, Paula Goulding, Malai Larson, Delynn, a.k.a. Sugar Frey, Teresa Watson, Angela Federn, Tamara Penderson, and Celia Beth Van Zanten.
So they were able to, at some point, to identify the people who were not, because of their name, were not like easily identifiable?
Yes.
Okay.
They also had Hansen's help at the end.
True.
One interesting and important note about the victim referred to as Horseshoe Harriet.
Okay.
So her body was found on April 25th, 1984, near Horseshoe Lake, hence the name. On October 22nd, 2021, at the request and with funding from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the Alaska Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Unit renewed efforts to identify Horseshoe Harriet 37 years after her death by exhuming her body from Anchorage Memorial Park. Mm-hmm. In August 2021, a new DNA profile was uploaded to a public genealogy database, leading to several close matches and the creation of the victim's family tree, along with a facial reconstruction.
Wow.
Genealogy research by Parabon Nanolabs and the Alaska Bureau of Investigation indicated that the victim was likely a woman named Robin Pelkey. Really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Each of these women had lives, dreams, and futures that they were trying to do their best to hit and were cruelly stolen away from them.
Yeah.
While their stories may have been overshadowed by the horrors of their deaths, we must remember them for who they were, not just as victims, but as individuals with legacies that remind us of the importance of empathy, justice, and the relentless pursuit of protecting the vulnerable. Their names should be spoken with reverence and their memories preserved with dignity. And that's the case.
It's funny you say that, because when you read off 3 names twice towards like the middle end of this episode. As you read off the 3 names and then 3 names again, I was like, the name, right, is assigned to a person.
That's right.
Who's like a whole ass person.
Yeah.
So like when I started studying, I studied Buddhism a little bit, just reading books and whatever. And the way they look at things is like, if they see a piece of paper, they see the the person that dropped it off at the most recent place where it was bought from, the truck that delivered it to that place, the trees that were cut down to make it into paper, the ink that's printed across, the sunlight that fed the tree its entire life, 70 years, 80 years, the soil, the nutrients, like it's all part of like just looking at a piece of paper. And I mean, doing that with people's like, which leads me to my tank's titty, but I'll let you.
That's why I find it so upsetting when a victim can't be identified, because you lose that. I mean, we don't. I really believe you and I are so victim focused, but people in general lose that exactly sentiment that you just explained, that it's like a human being with a name, like that this person was given a name. Her name was Roxanne. Her parents
were
named her
excited
that
when she was born.
Exactly. They probably called her Roxy. Like, you know what I mean? There's stories, they're people, they had families, have families. Listen, they were dealt some kind of hand that led them to where they were, you know, at that point. But at the end of the day, human beings, human beings. And that's why somebody like Robert Hansen, to dehumanize them and to classify them as indecent, bad, and law enforcement to kind of like keep that mentality going, it's despicable.
Yeah.
It's despicable. So I like to leave off cases by remembering the victims because they're human beings.
Yeah. There's an interesting take on that line in the Constitution where it says all men are created equal, or maybe it's the
Declaration of Independence.
Other thing.
That other really important document that our entire nation is based on.
Yeah, whatever. I heard somebody saying like, it doesn't mean obviously that all men, women, men meaning mankind, 1700s, whatever, are created equal in the sense that they're all the same. It means that the value of their life, everyone's life is valued ideally on the same playing field. Meaning, I know we just talked about this, but like, you can't just go kill a homeless person for fun.
Right.
You know what I mean? That person's life has inherent value.
Yes.
I think that's really interesting to think about in terms of like, we all deserve to be here. We all have as much right as anybody else to try and make a good life for ourselves and enjoy it and create.
And if we're not living the best life, that doesn't make us any less worthy.
No.
Or you know what I mean? We deserve the same space that somebody else deserves just because our, you know, situation here and now is not what you think is acceptable.
Yeah.
So that was a heavy case.
Yes.
And detailed and like loads of, like a moving timeline. You know what I mean? It was definitely a little tricky to research. But I, for some reason, feel like Robert Hansen is not discussed enough in the true crime circle and the true crime outlet.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you always hear like Dahmer and Bundy, and with good reason.
Yeah.
And maybe for whatever reason,
why good reason? Those people don't, now that I'm knowing about all these different cases, they don't seem that special.
I just mean to suggest that there's so much to unpack.
Yeah.
And maybe Robert Hansen is, like, maybe I'm just missing it for whatever reason. Like, maybe somebody's probably going to DM us and be like, really? I read like 10 books on him. He's everywhere.
Yeah.
For me, he just wasn't.
Yeah.
So when I learned enough about him to understand what a fuckface he was, I was like, we got to do this.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I was wondering if you could leave off on a giant tank titty.
Well, it just dropped 2 tank titties. I do have a third tit in
Also,
there
it doesn't have to be giant, by the way. It can be whatever size it needs to be.
I do have a third nipple ready to go. Right on my rib. Just kidding.
I have nipples. Greg, can you milk me?
I'll milk the fuck out of you. That's what he should have said.
I know.
So today something happened, and this is not so much a tank's titty, more so a recommendation. So my son's school is having like a Veterans Gratitude Day thing. And he goes, was Grandpa in the Army? And I go, he was actually in the Army. Yeah, why? And he brings over this piece of paper with like this thing on it he wants him to go to this thing, right? So I text my dad, I go, I know you were in the Army, what were the years, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, I just need some of this information. I'm going to put you down for this. And then we have to find a picture and make it 5x7 to put on the Hall of Heroes, not quasi-heroes, real heroes. So I'm looking at pictures of my dad on Facebook, my camera roll, anywhere that I might find one. And suddenly, his whole face changed in my brain.
What do you mean?
I just saw him completely differently.
Did you see him as like a human being in the world?
Yeah, you kind of like get compartmentalized into like, that's my dad, that's my dad. I remember when my parents became people to me. I don't remember what day it was or what year it was, but I remember the moment where I was like, holy shit, you guys haven't been together since the day I was born? Or no, like you haven't been together since the day you were born?
Right.
You met each other?
Right.
That's weird.
You know when they became people to me? When I realized I was getting older, and then I paused and I was like, oh, they're getting older too.
So are they. Yeah.
So are they.
Yeah.
Like the same forgiveness and kindness I try and give myself. Like if I don't remember something and I'm like, you know what? I got a lot going on. I'm getting older jokingly. And I'm like, oh, why do I get so mad at my parents when they do the same thing? They're getting older too.
Yeah.
They got a lot going on too.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Like, I find it funny that even I obviously do this. Like,
even I.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I made it sound like other people do it, but I definitely do it too.
Yeah.
If your kid's having a temper tantrum, you start having a temper tantrum.
You do that?
Well, if they're being like out of control, yeah, of course. I raise my voice, yell, try and get them under control.
Yeah.
Like, how is that different? It's not different.
I know you're supposed to like wait it out, but it's impossible.
Or just control the energy in the house.
Oh, fuck that, man. My kid's off the goddamn wall.
I know. We need to corral this. But basically the tank's titty is to, if it doesn't work like if, so Jessica said something very interesting. She goes, yeah, you're looking at like other people in the pictures. You're not just looking at yourself. I was like, oh my God.
But it's more than that because it's your dad. Like that's the point.
But I think that would happen with my sons. It would happen with you or Dave or my wife or my mother or anybody that I know well that every time we take a picture, I'm like, well, let's just make sure I look good.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Go through it. It only took like 3 minutes.
Right.
For me to be like, who is this man?
Yeah. I know I saw a picture of my dad with a mustache on a motorcycle and I was like, what? What?
So my dad has always been like handsome, known as handsome. I never thought he was handsome. He's fucking handsome.
He is. He's a very handsome man.
He really is. I was like, damn, dude, you look great. He's 74 years old.
Is he really? Wow.
Yeah.
He looks great.
Yeah.
Go give him a hug.
Yeah. Luckily we see him a lot. And my mom. We see both of them. He watches the kids every I
love it. I know.
weekend.
You're great parents.
Yeah. Well, that's it for me. So just look at pictures of people and see them differently and look at them until you see them differently. And
in true crime cases, please view these victims as human beings and people and not just part of a story, a gruesome story where you're focusing on the crazy details.
Yeah.
Just full picture. Remember, they're people.
Yeah. All right. Well, part 2 was even better than part 1.
Thank you. God,
yeah.
I hope so. Thank you. I need some help.
You do need so much help.
I'm the most insecure person. Okay, let's leave.
Yeah, no, let's talk about that. Let's dig into that.
I'm so insecure, right, guys?
40-year-old version, you've never seen it?
I have seen it, actually.
I'm insecure. Can't you tell?
Yeah, we should get a soundbite.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
It's okay. I have work to do on myself. I'm
You're
up for it.
too busy with research. You'll get to yourself.
I'm up for
at
it.
some point. Why don't you start researching yourself?
Why don't you start speaking?
Anyway, well, thank you guys for watching so much. We'll see you at the next episode. If you're here, still, you're a real one. And that's it from me.
And thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
Bye.